So, I've done some reading of your rhetorical analysis paragraphs, and although I haven't read them all, I haven't gotten all of them yet. I did want to share with you some of the pretty fantastic writing that I've noticed, just to give you a sense for some of the options that you have when you're writing a rhetorical analysis paragraph. So, I'm going to share 3 exemplars that I found over the past week that I thought were really great, and I'm going to kind of go through some of the things that I thought were really fantastic about them. So I have them in a PowerPoint. So I'm going to share that with you now. See if this works. There we go. All right. So I'm going to post this PowerPoint on Classroom as well, so you have easy access to it. So this first example, this was from Hazlitt's On the Want of Money. So what I thought was really great about this example is this person's parallel, that what they're doing is they're trying to show you how the writer's style is actually a really great example of what the author is trying to do. So their topic sentence in the letter on the want of money, Hazlitt emphasizes the terrible realities of being poor through a long and drawn-out sentence that spans almost 30 lines. So I know in my tutorials, I'm always saying, give me the strategy and the purpose. This one gives you the purpose first, and that's totally fine. It totally is. I love that. So she's trying to emphasize the terrible realities. That's kind of the purpose. And the strategy is that long and drawn out sentence that spans almost 30 lines. So they're just kind of flip-flopping it, but it works. So the lack of a period in these lines creates a gut-wrenching feeling in the audience and plays on the idea that, like this drawn-on sentence, living in poverty is never ending. When someone is poor, they're not only scrutinized by strangers and neglected by friends, but they're also in exile in one's own country, as well as dependent on the goodwill and caprice of others, and the list continues on. So this person is not putting the whole quote in there, but they're kind of using little bits and pieces of it. And if this is an almost 30-line quote, that's a really good thing to do, because if I'm reading a rhetorical analysis essay, that's going to take me a really long time to kind of get through that. So this person is kind of pulling out examples and telling us that this is kind of what you're going to get out of this 30-line sentence, but it's not the only thing, right? So with a list describing life in poverty that seems like it is never ending, this lengthy sentence in the middle of Hazlitt's letter allows the audience to get the tiniest glimpse into how sorrowful and dreary being poor is. So that list describing poverty, that's kind of explaining the quote, right? So this person is really telling us what the author is doing by writing that sentence, and also giving us a little bit of a glimpse at kind of what it's doing with the audience. So not only is being poor terrible in itself, it feels impossible to escape, much like how a reader would feel while taking in almost 30 lines of melancholy descriptions of a life without money. So again, we're talking about, this is kind of the claim, right? That they're really trying to show us that being poor is terrible. It feels impossible to escape. And also bringing us into that connection. The audience needs to feel that, right? So Hazlitt understands, here's our analysis of the author. Hazlitt understands that the continuing nature of the line will take this audience on an emotional journey, and that the unsettling feeling the reader will be left with will even further convince them that money is important and valuable to have. So we're really, again, talking about that emotional connection, kind of like if you're burdening the reader by the length of your sentence is kind of a parallel. So I thought that was fantastic. It's kind of unique. I haven't seen this quite yet this year. So I wanted to give you kind of a glimpse at what that analysis could be. All right, so the next example comes from an advertisement that I thought was really clever, actually. So this one we've got, I want you to wash your hands, Uncle Sam, responding to the global pandemic. So I wanted you to get a glimpse of that so that we could kind of be able to contextualize what it is that this writer is talking about. So the artist uses references to U.S. Army recruitment tactics during World War I and World War II to suggest that it is the audience's responsibility to practice safety precautions during a global pandemic. Great. I would really like to not use the word uses. So maybe we say something like the artist refers to US Army recruitment tactics. Easy as that, we can get rid of it and just not have uses at all. So they compare this to the way the same format was used to convince people that it was America's wish that they enlist to fight for the interest of the nation. In the cartoon, the artist mirrors the original poster's tagline, "I want you for the US Army," with a timely and humorous parody that also emphasizes the gravity of the current situation. I think the writing here is fabulous. This person is really the transitions are smooth. It's got a complexity, it's got a sophistication, it's got real style here. So a timely and humorous parody that emphasizes the gravity of the current situation. That's a very apt description of what's happening here. So there's our explain the evidence. This is persuasive because it reinforces recommendations from health organizations while attempting to show necessity and encouragement of the actions required to protect from the spread of COVID-19 in a similar way to the necessity and encouragement for young men to enlist during global war in order to protect the US. So I really like that this author is explaining that connection between World War II and the pandemic. The one thing that I think this is lacking is really getting into those audience values and beliefs. So what is it about current America that's really going to... I have a cat. He's trying to join me. What is it about current America that is really going to convince people to take on the pandemic as we would World War II? So do we have certain values and beliefs? Do we value patriotism? Do we value really fighting for your country? Do we value that, like, getting together? What is it that this is really going to trigger in the audience to convince them that we really need to do something about COVID-19? So really great style, really great example of the evidence. We're just really looking for more of a connection to the audience. The last one, this was an article about parenting during the COVID-19 crisis. So you guys are really relevant in the articles that you're choosing. And this author, I believe, is trying to convince parents that they're not alone and that there's a community for them that's struggling together. So I loved the topic sentence of this one. Smith shows her audience that they are not alone in their struggles by sharing her own personal experience with parenting during the coronavirus pandemic. So again, this kind of flip-flops. They're stating the purpose first, the strategy next. Totally great. I love that. She states that before the COVID-19 pandemic, I could have never conceived of running my own interviews on my laptop in my dining room, but there I was. My 4-year-old son chose that time to have one of the many meltdowns that have come with this crisis. So I can kind of see what this author is trying to do here. There's two things: this idea of this news anchor who's really trying to get her work moving while she's at home. But then there's also this kind of interruption from her 4-year-old. It's a little bit choppy. I think maybe a transition word would be a little bit better if there was maybe an and or a but, or even using maybe this writer could separate the two quotes, like our first example, by doing one in quotes and then saying, she then adds, my 4-year-old son chose this. That might make it a little bit smoother, but I love that they include both of these things because both are important with that connection to the audience's struggles. So then this person really dives into who the author is. As a news anchor, Smith has become accustomed to working outside of the home with no family around to interrupt. Sharing this personal experience allows her audience of struggling parents, so there's our analysis of the audience, to have someone to relate to and to make their situations not seem so bad. This brings a sense of community for parents worldwide to help them get through the impossible situations that they're being faced with. Great connection to the claim. The one thing about this, I think it starts around here in the with no family to interrupt. I think a little bit more explanation of how the writer is experiencing the same thing as the audience might help. So she's become accustomed to working outside of the home with no family around to interrupt. but she's now experiencing that. And maybe we talk about the fact that she's a news anchor. She has a little bit of fame, you know, like she has kind of a reputation that might reach out to the audience. You never know. A little bit more maybe audience values and beliefs. Maybe we value doing good work. Maybe we value also caring for our children well, you know. So really bringing in that like sense of connection. How is that really going to make them be like, okay, you know what, I'm totally fine. Maybe they're thinking like, oh boy, I'm so glad that I'm not a news anchor. That would be crazy if I'm trying to have that kind of a professional life with a 4-year-old. Maybe they get to compare their situation with the writer's situation. Otherwise, this is a really great concise paragraph that has an kind of a really clear view of how this personal experience is being used to connect with the audience. So I hope these 3 examples are helpful. I hope they're inspiring to you as you revise your paragraphs this week. If you have any questions at all about any of the comments that I posted or about any of these examples, please reach out. Let me know. I'm going to do an office hours probably on Thursday, where I'll do a Google Meet where you can come in and we can talk about these things together. So have a fantastic week, and I hope this is helpful.